There's just something about ancient magic, isn't there? That sense of mystery, secret rituals, maybe influencing things we can't see. It really captures the imagination.
It absolutely does. And today we're diving into a really specific and often, let's say, misunderstood system, the Goetia.
Exactly. And, this deep dive is especially for you, our listener. You shared the source material, The Art of Goetia, an authentic walkthrough and comprehensive safety guide wanting to know more about this practice. It's got such a rich, complex history.
It really does. And our plan today is to, well, unpack that. We'll look at where Goetia comes from. The main text involved the Lesser Key of Solomon, what kind of spirits we're talking about, the actual ritual process, which is quite detailed.
And the safety stuff. Definitely need to cover that.
Absolutely. Safety and ethics are a huge part of it.
So the goal is to kind of peel back the layers, look at the history versus how people see it now, and maybe uncover some surprising things along the way.
It's a fascinating mix, really. History, folklore, religion, even psychology, all kind of intersect here. It's not just old beliefs, but how they keep evolving.
Okay, let's jump in. Where does this all start? The origins, the word Goetia itself. It has a bit of a story, right?
It does, yeah. The word itself comes from Greek goes. Originally, it was pretty broad to diviners, magicians, healers, seers, that sort of thing.
So not necessarily negative at first?
Not inherently, but, well, it often carried connotations of maybe low magic, a bit distinct from theurgy, which was seen as higher, dealing with, divine spirits. Goetia sometimes implied maybe trickery.
Ah, okay. So even early on, there was this kind of split, this hierarchy of magical practice.
Precisely. And if you go back even further, the idea of magical incantations is ancient. You find cuneiform tablets in Mesopotamia, 5th, 4th century BC.
Wow, that far back.
Oh, yeah. And in Egypt, you have the Heka system, magic words on amulets. These were, early attempts to influence the world using word symbols.
It's incredible to think about that continuity. Humans trying to shape reality through language for millennia. Was it always benevolent magic?
Definitely not. Ancient Greece had curse tablets. People would inscribe curses on lead or wax, bury them.
Ooh, sinister stuff.
Very much so. Our source calls them individualistic, instrumental, and sinister. And even the word magic itself, from Persian originally, started picking up negative baggage in Greece. Practitioners were seen as maybe charlatans, doing dangerous things.
And that negativity just grew over time, especially with the Romans.
Absolutely. Rome actually passed laws against magical practices. There was real societal fear. And this view became even stronger in medieval and Renaissance Europe. Goetia was widely condemned then as basically evil and heretical.
Right. I remember reading that even someone like Agrippa, who wrote a lot about occult philosophy.
Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa,
yeah.
A major figure. But he explicitly denounced Goetia. In his 3 books of occult philosophy, he calls it unfortunate, tied to unclean spirits, unlawful charms. He basically said it should be completely rejected.
So for centuries, Goetia was really pushed into the shadows, seen as dangerous. How did it make such a comeback in the 19th century? That seems like a big shift.
It is a big shift, and that's where things get really interesting. The 19th century had this magical revival. You had figures like Eliphas Levi and later Aleister Crowley.
Crowley comes up a lot in this context.
He's pivotal. Definitely. They started re-examining and reinterpreting these older traditions. They brought in elements from Jewish Kabbalah, that mystical tradition, also Hermeticism, which looks back to ancient wisdom, and different kinds of ceremonial magic.
So they were synthesizing things,
Yeah.
pulling different threads together.
Exactly. And Crowley, especially through his involvement with groups like the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and his own writings in the 20th century, he hugely shaped how Goetia is understood and practiced today.
It's quite a journey then. From being seen as deceptive, then criminal, then condemned by the church, and finally revived and reinterpreted by modern occultists.
It really shows how the understanding of magic, of spirits, isn't static at all. It changes with society, religion, new esoteric ideas. Those early negative views are a stark contrast to later attempts to systematize it, even frame it within complex ceremonial magic.
Which naturally leads us to the core text people associate with Goetia, the Lesser Key of Solomon. But it sounds like it's not just one book written at one time.
That's right. The Lesser Key of Solomon, or Lemega Clavicula Salomonis, is technically an anonymous grimoire, a magic textbook, basically from the 17th century. But it's really a compilation. It gathers much older material, some maybe going back to the 14th century or even earlier.
And calling it the Key of Solomon, that's more about giving it authority than historical fact.
Exactly. King Solomon has this long association with magic and folklore and older texts, sure, but the Lesser Key itself, it has things that just don't fit Solomon's time. Titles of nobility for demons that didn't exist then, Christian prayers.
Yeah, the anachronisms. Telltale signs it was compiled much later.
Right. It's what academics call pseudepographic, attributed to a famous person who didn't actually write it, usually to make it seem more important or ancient.
So it's a collection, drawing on older traditions, given this veneer of Solomonic authority, and it's split into 5 parts.
Yes, 5 distinct books within the collection. The most famous one is the Ars Goetia. That's the part with the detailed lists of 72 spirits or demons, their seals, their powers, how to summon them. A lot of it is actually based on an earlier work by Johann Weyer, his Pseudomonarchia Daemonum.
Okay, so Ars Goetia is the heart of it for many people. What are the other 4 books about?
Well, there's the Ars Goetia, which deals more with aerial spirits and different types of ceremonial magic. Then the Ars Paulina, which is interesting. It connects angelic hierarchies to planetary hours, and it's attributed, believe it or not, to Paul the Apostle.
Paul the Apostle.
Yeah, another pseudepographic attribution, presumably. Then there's the Ars Almadel, which focuses on contacting angels using things like wax tablets and scrying divination with reflective surfaces. And lastly, the Ars Notoria, which offers magical prayers and techniques supposedly for gaining knowledge and eloquence.
It's a real grab bag of magical traditions all bound together. And wasn't there a key English translation that made it more widely known?
Yes, absolutely. In 1904, S.L. MacGregor Matters translated it into English. Aleister Crowley then published it as The Book of the Goetia of Solomon the King. That publication had a huge influence on modern occultism, making the Goetia accessible like never before in the English-speaking world.
So the Lesser Key is really a melting pot. You can see traces of so many different cultures and traditions in there.
Oh, definitely. It's syncretic, that's the technical term. It pulls from Mesopotamian ideas, Greek magic, Jewish Kabbalah, Christian concepts, Hermetic philosophy, Renaissance occultism. It's a synthesis.
So its authenticity isn't about being some pure ancient text, but more about this ongoing process of adaptation and blending ideas over centuries.
Precisely. It reflects how these esoteric traditions work. They absorb, they reinterpret, they evolve as they move through time and across cultures.
Okay, let's talk about the spirits themselves.
Yeah.
The Ars Goetia lists 72. You mentioned they have ranks, kings, dukes, and so on.
That's right. The Ars Goetia details 72 spirits, usually called demons, each with a unique seal or sigil, specific powers, areas they influence. And yes, there's a hierarchy. Kings, dukes, princes, marquises, earls, presidents, knights, various titles.
But you said the order they appear in the book isn't necessarily based on power.
Exactly. The numbering, 1 through 72, just doesn't seem to correlate directly with importance. For example, spirits like Belial, Byleth, Asmodee, and Gap are called out as the chiefest, but they're number 68, 13, 32, and 33 respectively. Not sequential at all.
Interesting. And they all operate under some higher powers.
Yeah, the text says all 72 are under the power of Amemon, Corson, Zminiar, and Goat, who are described as the ruling kings of the 4 cardinal directions, east, west, north, south.
And the sigils, the seals for each spirit.
Yeah.
They're pretty important. You even need to make them out of specific materials.
Extremely important. The sigils are seen as the direct link, the calling card almost, for connecting with and controlling the spirit. And yes, the grimoire specifies metals based on rank. Gold for a king, copper for a duke, silver for a marquis, and so on.
And traditionally, why would someone summon these spirits? What were the goals?
The traditional aims cover a lot of ground. Getting knowledge, specific subjects, secrets, the future, influencing people, making someone fall in love, gaining favor, finding things, hidden treasures, lost items, controlling stuff, weather, nature, healing or causing illness. Invisibility is another one. Even manipulating social situations.
That sounds very focused on external results, on getting things done in the world. But modern interpretations sound quite different.
They really are. The last century saw a big shift, largely influenced by psychology, especially Jungian ideas and figures like Crowley reinterpreting things. Many modern practitioners don't see these as literal independent demons out there.
So what do they see them as?
Often as archetypes,
Yeah.
personifications of universal human traits, desires, fears. Think of them like symbols emerging from the collective unconscious, to use Jung's term. Engaging with the spirit of, say, knowledge isn't about talking to an external entity, but exploring the archetype of knowledge within yourself.
So it becomes a psychological exploration, like externalizing parts of your own mind.
That's a key interpretation. Some call it externalizing aspects from the Oneros, the individual mindscape, bringing out hidden memories, powerful emotions, maybe shadow aspects, into conscious awareness through the ritual structure. The idea is to understand them, maybe gain some freedom from their unconscious grip.
That's a radically different way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Are there other modern takes?
Oh, yeah. Some talk about spirits from the Temenos, representing more universal concepts from collective memory. Others see them linked to the anima mundi, the world soul, maybe representing forces of nature, animals, ecological concepts. But often the underlying goal is personal transformation. Goetia, as a structured way to explore the psyche, achieves self-growth.
And didn't Crowley suggest it was all basically happening inside the magician's head?
He did lean that way, emphasizing the psychological and even psychophysiological basis of magic. He saw the demons as sort of convenient labels for the effects produced by the intense focus and sensory experiences of the ritual. It's the ritual itself affecting the brain and perception.
So you have this split. Literal external demons for practical ends versus internal archetypes for self-mastery and insight.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is even with these totally different ideas about what the spirits are, the reasons people engage often stay similar. Whether you think you're commanding a demon or confronting an archetype, you might still be seeking knowledge or influence or transformation. It shows the flexibility of the system, why it still appeals today.
Okay, so if someone were to actually engage in this, the preparation seems absolutely crucial. The source really hammers this home. We're talking preparatory rites.
Absolutely indispensable. You can't overstate the emphasis on preparation for both safety and, well, effectiveness. It's really two main things: purifying yourself and consecrating the ritual space.
Let's start with purifying the self. What does that look like traditionally?
It typically involves a ritual bath, cleansing the body, and then wearing specific garments, usually clean white linen. It's seen as both physical and symbolic purification, getting you into the right state mentally and spiritually for the work ahead.
And the space itself. How do you prepare that?
The space needs to be consecrated, turned from an ordinary place into a sacred one. This usually involves burning specific incenses, maybe drawing protective symbols on the floor or walls. The idea is to create a space that can contain the magical energy and protect the person doing the ritual.
The source also mentions the bornless ritual specifically as a key preliminary step. What's its role?
Right. The bornless ritual is often seen as critical. Its purpose is multi-layered. It's for spiritual protection, purification of the practitioner, and kind of tuning their energy and focus for the main event. It's generally considered a more advanced practice, something you do after getting comfortable with simpler rituals, like, say, the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram.
So none of this is just going through the motions. The bath, the clothes, clearing the space, the bornless ritual, they all have intended functions.
Exactly. Psychologically, it helps shift your mindset, creates a boundary between everyday life and the ritual state. Energetically, it's believed to clear out interfering influences. Consciously, it sharpens focus, makes you more receptive, which is vital when you're dealing with potentially intense energies.
Beyond purifying yourself and the space, there's also the consecration of the magical tools. It sounds like these are way more than just stage props.
Oh, absolutely. The Lesser Key gives really specific instructions for making and preparing these tools. They aren't just symbolic. They're believed to be imbued with magical properties through consecration, each designed for a specific role in the ritual.
And it's quite a list of tools. You've got the magical circle, the triangle of art, hexagrams, pentagrams, a ring, a brass vessel, the spirit seals, wand, cup, sword, pantacle, oils, maybe a scourge or dagger, lamp, the book itself, bell, crown, robe, lambent. Woo!
It is extensive. Each one has a job. The circle protects. The triangle contains the spirit's manifestation. The sigils connect to the specific spirit. The wand directs will. The sword commands. They all work together within this very structured system.
And it's the act of consecration that supposedly gives them their power.
That's the traditional view. Consecration aligns them with the magician's intent and authority, imbues them with the necessary magical charge. They become extensions of the magician's focus, tangible anchors for the ritual. If you skip or mess up the preparation of the tools, the thinking goes, you undermine the whole operation. You haven't set up the right conditions or established the necessary conviction.
So they're functional ritual technology, essentially, designed to externalize intent and maintain control.
That's a good way to put it. They're not just decorative. They're seen as essential components for making the magic work safely and effectively.
We've got self, space, tools prepared. But timing and environment also seem really important in Goetia. Why the focus on specific times or places?
Right. That meticulous attention to timing and location goes back to this core belief that cosmic alignments, planetary hours, the specific energy of a place, all these can significantly impact the ritual's success and, crucially, its safety.
So it's not just what you do, but when and where you do it.
Exactly. Traditional texts often specify the best hours to summon spirits based on their rank. Kings might be summoned during certain daytime hours, marquises at night. Modern practice often brings in more complex astrology, looking at planetary positions, zodiacal signs. The Ars Paulina part of Alesoki actually links angels to specific planetary hours and signs.
And the location matters too. Attics, forests, secluded places.
Yes, the old texts often suggest isolated spots, places believed to have some inherent energy. Cemeteries sometimes get mentioned, but usually with a warning about attracting unwanted attention. The main thing is the place needs to feel energetically stable, strong enough to handle the ritual.
And sometimes offerings are required, depending on the spirit.
That's correct. Some rituals specify offerings. Sometimes it's something relatively simple like dark chocolate. Other times, for more powerful spirits, it might involve something more significant, described sometimes as buffering or sacrifice, especially if summoning a spirit like Paimon alone.
So all these details, timing, location, offerings, they're all about trying to optimize the conditions, increase control.
Precisely. It's about trying to harmonize with perceived cosmic flows, minimize random variables, and maximize the magician's control over forces that are seen as potentially volatile. It reflects a worldview where aligning with these subtle energies is key to both power and safety.
Okay, so we've laid all the groundwork, history, text, spirits, preparation. Now let's walk through the ritual itself. Step one seems to be that preliminary invocation, the Bornless ritual.
Yes, that's typically where it starts. The Bornless ritual, as we mentioned, has roots in Greco-Egyptian magic, originally for things like exorcism or healing, calling on the headless one to banish negativity.
But its use in Goetia is broader now.
Much broader, yeah. Especially through the influence of the Golden Dawn and Crowley, it became a standard preliminary rite for protection, purification, and just generally preparing the magician's state of mind and energy for the evocation to come. Crowley saw it as essential, linking it to contacting one's holy guardian angel, a core idea for him.
What does the ritual actually involve? What does the person do?
It usually starts with stating your intention clearly. Then there are preparatory invocations to sort of attune yourself. The main part is invoking the Bornless One, interpreted now as maybe the ultimate divine source, beyond beginning or end, unifying the divine and the practitioner. You recite various divine names and attributes, calling for protection, guidance, authority.
And some of the language is really striking. Thee I invoke, the Bornless One. I am he, the Bornless Spirit.
Very powerful stuff, rich in symbolism, drawing on Egyptian and Greek traditions. It might seem strange invoking all these divine names right before you summon a demon, but the logic is about establishing hierarchy. You're positioning yourself as acting with higher authority, giving you the right to command the spirit.
Okay, so it sets the stage, establishes authority, provides protection. What comes next after the Bornless ritual is done?
The next absolutely critical physical step is setting up the magical circle and the triangle of art. These are fundamental for safety and control.
Right, the magical circle that's primarily for the magician's protection.
Exactly. It's the main defensive barrier. It's meant to contain the ritual's energy, define the sacred space, and shield the magician from any hostile influences, whether from the spirit or elsewhere. Symbolically, it also represents wholeness, the magician's connection to the infinite.
And how is it made? Physically drawn?
It can be physical drawn with consecrated salt, flour, chalk, whatever the tradition dictates. Or it can be visualized strongly. Often, the designs include specific divine names or angelic names written around the perimeter to boost its protective power. The key things are It needs to be big enough for you and your tools, and you must stay inside it for the whole ritual.
And if you absolutely had to leave?
You'd need to ritually cut a door in the circle's boundary, and then ritually seal it again when you return to maintain its integrity. You don't just step out.
Got it. So circle protects the magician. What about the triangle of art? That's where the spirit appears.
Precisely. It's placed outside the circle. It's the designated spot where the spirit is compelled to manifest visibly. Its main job is to contain the spirit, keeping it confined and preventing it from directly interacting with or harming the magician in the circle.
What does the triangle typically look like?
It's usually drawn as a triangle, often with specific words of power inscribed along its sides. Inside the triangle, there's often a darkened circle, and within that circle, you'd place the sigil of the spirit you're summoning. It can be drawn on the floor, made on parchment, or sometimes incorporated into a scrying mirror or a bowl of water used for visualization. The core belief is that a spirit appearing in a properly constructed triangle is bound by certain rules, obedience, truthfulness, which are essential for the ritual to work.
So the circle keeps the magician safe inside. The triangle keeps the spirit contained outside. A very deliberate structure. And then comes the actual summoning, the conjurations.
Yes, the conjurations are the verbal heart of it. These are the specific invocations, the commands, the calls used to book the spirit forth visibly, in fair and comely shape, as the text says, into that triangle.
And their power comes from invoking God's names.
That's the principle. By reciting numerous divine names, titles, attributes of God, the magician is basically leveraging a higher authority to compel the spirit's obedience. The spirits are seen as subordinate to these divine powers. The grimoire lists many of these names, IAH, AGLA, Tetragrammaton, El Shaddai, Adonai, and so on, often with biblical links to emphasize their power.
That list in the source is quite long. It really drives home that connection to divine authority being the lever.
It does, and these conjurations aren't just said once, they're often repeated, sometimes with increasing force. If the spirit doesn't show up, the ritual usually includes stronger threats and constraints to force compliance. It shows it's not always easy. It can be an adversarial process.
It's not just reading words. It's about the magician's conviction, their ability to project that authority. What if the spirit still doesn't appear after all that?
Then you move to the constraint, or legatio. This is an even more intense series of commands, really binding the spirit to your intent. It often involves invoking harsher consequences, threats of divine punishment, maybe brandishing the consecrated magical sword or wand. Once the spirit does appear, you then deliver the address to the spirit. Here, often holding the pentacle of Solomon, you command it to answer truthfully and state what you want from it.
And maintaining that dominant posture is crucial throughout.
Absolutely critical. The texts stress this. For powerful spirits like King Belith, for example, it explicitly says the magician must be brave, use specific protective items like a silver ring, and continually assert dominance to keep the spirit in line. It really tests the magician's nerve.
It sounds incredibly intense, but then after all this commanding and threatening, there's a step called the welcome unto the spirit. That sounds odd.
It does seem paradoxical, doesn't it? After forcing it to appear, you welcome it. But it serves a ritual function. The magician formally acknowledges the spirit's presence and its compelled obedience through the power of God. It reaffirms the source of the magician's authority. Then the spirit is formally bound to stay within the triangle, remain visible and cooperative, and explicitly told not to leave until given permission without my license.
So it's less a friendly welcome, more like formally stating the terms of its confinement and required behavior now that it's here?
Yeah.
Makes more sense. Okay, so you've interacted, gotten what you needed. What's the final step?
The final step is absolutely vital, the license to depart, the licentia. This is about safely dismissing the spirit. The main goal is ensuring it goes back where it came from without causing any trouble or harm to the magician, other people, animals, anything.
It's not just saying, okay, you can go now.
Definitely not. It's formal. You typically thank the spirit for its obedience, for doing what was asked. Then you explicitly charge it to leave peaceably and quietly, often invoking divine peace. And crucially, the magician must stay inside the circle until absolutely sure the spirit has fully departed from the triangle.
Are there steps after the spirit leaves?
Yes. Usually there are post-ritual prayers, thanking God for success and protection, and the ritual space is often cleansed again, banishing any lingering energies. The sheer detail around the dismissal really highlights the perceived danger of not doing it properly. An improperly dismissed spirit is considered a real risk. The license to depart is as crucial as the summoning itself. It's the final safety lock.
The amount of structure and precaution involved really emphasizes the safety concerns. And the source material spends a lot of time on risks and ethics, which seems essential.
It is. The traditional view is quite blunt about the risks. These spirits are described as potentially dangerous, hard to control, only obeying if the ritual is perfect and the magician is firm, if things go wrong. While the texts warn about the spirit becoming disobedient or angry, trying to influence or corrupt the magician, causing psychological distress, spiritual imbalance, exhaustion, unintended negative consequences, even potential long-term karmic or energetic issues.
That's a pretty daunting list of potential downsides from the traditional perspective. What specific protections are built into the system?
We've covered the main ones. The magical circle is paramount. The triangle contains the spirit. The divine names in the conjurations bind and compel. The spirit's own sigil is used for control. Some traditions also pair each Goetic spirit with one of the 72 angels of the Shem Hemephorash for added protection and authority. And then there's apotropaic magic, generally protective charms, amulets, gestures.
Plus the banishing rituals, like the LBRP or the Bornless ritual, which clear the space and protect the practitioner beforehand.
Exactly. And the license to depart is the final protective act. And don't forget the magician's demeanor, brave, commanding, but sometimes showing specific forms of respect to certain high-ranking spirits. The sheer number of safeguards shows how seriously the risks were traditionally taken. It's a layered defense system.
But, as we talked about, the modern view often isn't about literal external demons. How does that psychological interpretation change the view of safety?
It shifts the focus. If the demons are parts of your own psyche, the danger isn't being attacked by an external entity, but perhaps being overwhelmed by what you stir up internally. Confronting deep-seated fears, repressed desires, shadow aspects that can be psychologically destabilizing if you're not prepared or if you don't have healthy integration mechanisms. The risk becomes psychological imbalance, delusion, maybe activating unconscious drives in harmful ways.
So even without literal demons, there are still real potential dangers in messing with the deep psyche irresponsibly.
Absolutely, and that's where ethics and responsible practice become so critical. Whether you believe the spirits are external or internal, modern discussions emphasize respect for the forces or symbols you're working with, self-awareness, clear intentions, and ethical considerations. Using insights responsibly, not for manipulation, understanding your motivations before you even start.
The source also mentions the skeptical view that there's no scientific proof these spirits exist or can be summoned.
Yes, and that's crucial context. From a skeptical standpoint, any experiences are likely psychological effects, placebo, suggestion, misinterpretation. It's important to maintain critical thinking. And many occult sources themselves warn novices against jumping into complex systems like Goetia without guidance, because the potential for psychological harm, getting involved in unhealthy groups, or even self-harm if things go badly is real.
So regardless of your belief system, traditional psychological caution, preparation, and responsibility seem to be the constant threads.
Definitely. The warnings are consistent. The ethical debates are ongoing. It highlights this core challenge. How do you navigate practices dealing with powerful subjective experiences that aren't easily verified, but can have profound effects? Self-reflection, clear intent, critical thinking, these seem essential for anyone exploring this territory.
Wow, we have covered a lot of ground today. From the ancient roots of Goetia through the lesser key, the nature of the spirits, external or internal, the incredibly detailed ritual steps with all their built-in safety measures, and finally, the modern psychological views and ethical questions. It's a huge topic.
It really is. And what strikes me is how it persists. This system, hundreds of years old, is still being used, debated, reinterpreted today. It clearly touches on something deep in the human experience, our fascination with the unknown, with power, with the hidden parts of ourselves.
So maybe a final thought for you, our listener, to ponder. When you look at this whole spectrum, the history, the rituals, the modern psychological takes, what does this enduring interest in Goetia really say about us? About our relationship with mystery, with control, with the depths of our own minds? Is the real power in those entities, whatever they may be, or is it in the transformation the practice itself could potentially spark within the person doing it?
It's a fundamental question, isn't it? The power of belief, the power of structured ritual, the power of confronting symbols that represent profound aspects of existence. Whether you see the spirits as out there or in here, the engagement itself seems to be the catalyst for something significant.
Absolutely, something to think about further. We hope this deep dive has given you a solid framework for your own explorations. Thanks for joining us.